Past the expiration date, the Parmalat scandal of 2003, a podcast by Sam Bazaar. What is Parmalat? Well, to put it simply, Parmalat is an Italian dairy company that manufactures and sells dairy products to numerous retailers around the world. Their products they sell include Black Diamond's cheese, Sensational soy milk, Astro yogurt, and more. In Canada, Parmalat employs more than 2,900 people and has 16 operating facilities all across the country. Although they have 120 years of brand heritage, 2003 proved to be a massive setback for the dairy manufacturer. Parmalat is said to be a massive multi-conglomerate corporation worth billions of dollars. But are they worth these billions of dollars they are said to be worth? Well, let's find out. In December of 2003, Parmalat was investigated for fraud. The reasons for these investigations is that there was a $14 billion hole in their financial statements. Throughout the years, Parmalat used fraudulent and evil techniques to forge their books and make it seem like they were doing well when really they were in a lot of debt. The main people behind this include Callisto Tanzi, the creator and founder of Parmalat and the longest-serving CEO. In 2004, it was discovered that Parmalat owed $16.1 billion US dollars, although they recorded their debt to be 8 times lower than this. US creditors filed a $10 billion lawsuit against Parmalat. What does Parmalat do? They turn around and sue the Bank of America, Citigroup, Deloitte Touche, and Grant Thornton for $10 billion each in an attempt to put the blame onto someone else. In 2005, the new interim CEO, Enrico Bondi, attempted to have Parmalat's stock reconstructed onto the Milan Stock Exchange. While trials were ongoing, he was successful and their stock was put back onto the Milan Stock Exchange. In 2008, Fonso Tona, the CFO of Parmalat, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for creating fake offshore accounts to hide earnings from both the American and Italian governments. 72-year-old Callisto Tanzi, again the founder, was sentenced to 18 years in prison in 2010. And yet, at the same time, Parmalat was able to recover almost $3 billion in bank settlements. In 2011, the Bank of America, Deutsche Bank, and Citigroup were all acquitted of all allegations against them of market rigging. Well, let's look at the steps that Parmalat took in order to allow this fraudulent behavior to take place. The fraud began in 1990 when Parmalat's original performance began to slip. They began to purchase far too many smaller companies without actually having enough money on hand. This created a lot of debt, and actually the Italian government had an $80 million bailout to Parmalat in order to keep their business operations running. The government would do this, of course, to allow jobs to be safe and maintained in Italy. In order to maintain their reputation as a massive multi-conglomerate corporation, Parmalat began using a variety of unethical accounting techniques to make their books appear to be more profitable. They inflated revenue by creating fake transactions through a double booking scheme. Not only that, it is said that 300 of Parmalat's employees knew about the double booking scheme and didn't say a word. They then used the receivables from these fake sales to borrow more money from banks, which they then hid this debt from investors. So what they would do is they would record these investments or these loans from banks under their assets, under cash, but they wouldn't record it under liabilities. They wouldn't record it as debt. They then colluded with investment bankers to have their debt removed. But not only removed, they hid it in their equity section. So not only was this debt not appearing as debt, it was appearing as looking good on their books. Double whammy. Perhaps the most important note here was to note GTI, their auditing firm. This auditing firm not only knew about the fraud, but helped Parmalat create a fake $300 million sale of powdered milk to the Cuban government. You know how Parmalat was caught? They defaulted on a $150 million euro bond, despite recording $4 billion in short-term assets. This obviously caused auditors to investigate their books, and sure enough, they had a $14 billion hole. This man right here, Callisto Tanzi, at at the age of 72, was sentenced to 18 years in prison for his fraudulent behavior in the Parmalat scandal. He lived a rich man's life. Expensive cars, expensive jets, expensive house, expensive vacations. Although he didn't really have any money. He just did a great job of hiding the fact he didn't have any money. The key thing to note about this man right here is the fact that it appeared that he was just trying to wait out all of these trials because of his old age, obviously, and probably didn't care much for what would happen to the company after his death. He decided to try and put the blame on a variety of other companies and banks and etc. in an attempt to hide everything from himself. The fact that this man is only sentenced to 18 years in prison shocks me. So, if all of this fraudulent behavior has taken place, why am I still able to walk into Foodland and purchase a brick of black diamond cheese? Well, a lot of thanks goes to Mr. Bondi, the new and current CEO of Parmalat, as he has worked very hard as the turnaround expert, they call him. This is due to the fact he has recovered almost $3 billion in money and revenues and cash for the company, as well as getting their stock reconstructed on the Milan Stock Exchange. He's still currently working hard, and Parmalat seems to be doing okay at this point in time. Not great, but okay. The main important external people from the company to note are obviously the shareholders. These people were screwed over. Their shares went from being worth at a max in 2002. Their prices were through the roof to a whopping $0 as of the 23rd of December 2003. $0. All of these people who invested their time and their money into Parmalat invested their money into criminals and became worth nothing. Not a penny. Couldn't sell it, couldn't trade it, everything was frozen, and their stock was valueless. Well, thanks to Mr. Bonzi, they're now worth about 3.1 euros as of today, which is December 4th, 2017. So, not a bad turnaround from zero, I guess. Well, what is it? Isn't it obvious what Parmalat lacked over this course of this time? Strong internal control. If they had have used a functioning voucher system, none of this fraudulent behavior could have ever taken place. It would have began with Department A over to the purchase requisition, down to the purchase department, down to the purchase order. The vendor then ships the goods. Receiving department gets the goods. Receiving report, invoices, accounts payable department, accounting department. 7 different people, 7 different departments, perhaps more than 7 different people, but definitely 7 different departments would have had to have touched and handled each of these financial statements. Everything that Parmalat said they were doing, said they were selling, said they were buying, would have had to gone through 7 different people. I 100% guarantee you it never once did. It was definitely Callisto himself out there creating false documents, false things, but not only that, colluding with the banks and the investment bankers and the auditing firms. They're guilty too. They're guilty too. And let's add a couple more problems to this list of a massive list of problems they've done. Access controls. Obviously, it's tough to keep Mr. Callisto Fonzi off of the books as he's the CEO and, founder of the company, but he had far too much access to everything in the company without anyone batting an eye, just letting him walk in, create fake things, collude, do whatever he pleased, anytime he wanted. No one was there to stop him. That's a problem. Not only that, let's talk about physical audits. Really, you want to talk about physical audits and internal controls when the auditor of the company is colluding with the company to create fake accounting papers. Really boggles my mind how weak and terrible the internal controls were within Parmalat and how somehow they were able to get away with all of this terrible internal control? Well, now that Callisto Fonzie is in prison for the next 18 years, it is time for Parmalat to establish some strong internal control. This obviously begins with their access controls. Now that there's no personal connection as the founder is in jail, it is time to buckle down, knuckle down, and control access to different parts of their accounting systems with passwords, lockouts, electronic access logs. Keep everything under lockdown and make sure they know everyone who has access to everything, and make sure that these people are held accountable when things go wrong. Next is to continue with their physical audits in the legal way. This means changing auditors every 9 years, like the law says they have to, and actually having their auditor audit the books honestly and not collude with the auditor and cheat their way through it. This means that if they believe their auditor might be, swapping their books with someone in the organization to personally gain, it means putting this auditor on trial, getting them in trouble, reporting them, doing everything they have to do to get rid of this auditor so this fraud doesn't take place again. Well, it was inevitable. When a company doesn't have any money and they have debts to pay, and when these debts come due and they can't pay it, well, they go bankrupt, as what happened with Parmalat. What was going to happen? What was their ultimate goal? They knew they were going to end up owing this money back at some point. What was their plan then? Who knows? They got caught, as well everyone will get caught, because when you don't have money and you owe people money, they're going to get you. That's all, folks. Thanks for a great time.